Welcome to the Tuesday Night Music Show, everybody. Brought to you by DJ Event Planner. www.djeventplanner.com. Check them out. The links are in the description of this video on YouTube. If the people at DJ and TV have done their job, that's where you'll find them. If not, I don't know, just look up DJ Event Planner online and check them out. They're a good service, and they sponsor this show. Thank you for that. And we've got, oh boy, we got Eric tonight. I like it when Eric's here.
I wanted to make sure I hung out with you guys tonight and gave you a chance to know what's going on in New Hampshire.
Oh, cool, Eric. Great.
That's a very poor imitation, by the way. We'll accept it.
We got John.
Hey.
Austin John. We got Matt from Georgia. We got Jay from wherever he wants to be from tonight, I guess.
I'm from the public consciousness, Brian, okay? And it's my job to read my manifesto after this whole show's over.
Yeah, we've got that vibe from you tonight already. But it's all good because it's time for Boston John's Record Roundup.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to talk about a person who's very influential, and it's going to lead to a label and actually a bunch of artists. And it's just, I didn't know how connected they were because I wasn't really paying attention for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
The gentleman I want to talk about, his name is Tom Silverman. Okay. And he was doing a dance music report as a magazine in 1978. And he noticed the trend of disco getting into the higher energy stuff. And he wanted to be involved in that. So old Tommy Boy, decided to create himself a record label in 1981. And he founded Tommy Boy Records.
Oh.
Okay.
Nice. So where did Tommy Boy land on my radar? Of course, first off would be like Afrika Bambaataa.
Right.
Planet Rock. And it was a staple. And you played that at every show. And then Looking for the Perfect Beat followed. And then you played that at almost every show. And he attracted the EDM side. I guess it'd be like electro beat, electro boogie artists initially. So he had Planet Patrol, Johnson Crew, of course, famous for Space Cowboy, Pac Jam. And he pretty much ran it solo up until about 85, where he merged with Warner Brother. Warner Brother bought him half out, and he made a ton of dough. But they opened the doors to get more R&B artists, which I was surprised to see because I own the records and I forgot what the labels they were on. So suddenly in 85, they picked up Queen Latifah. They picked up De La Soul. They had Force MDs already, but they got Naughty by Nature, Coolio, Digital Underground.
Too. They did some freestyle too, didn't they?
And they had some freestyle, a lot of house stuff too. So they kind of kept both worlds going on. But that's an interesting rabbit hole to dive down. That since its separation, I think 92, I think they closed the label and it went entirely under Warner Brothers. But there's some back catalog releases that have all of these, like the best of Tommy Boy.
Yes, I've seen those.
I think it could be up to 10 discs by this point. It was 5 when I looked at it a few years ago. But now that you see who else was on it, as they say, it's you had Latifah, House of Pain was on with them.
I was going to say House of Pain.
And that's very 617, very Boston for us.
Yeah,
we like that out here.
No,
but my pick for the week would be the label because it's a lot of upbeat energy dance that tends to get forgotten in the big scope of EDM and freestyle. Sure. And there was some banging beats back in the day, and we were dropping that stuff because rap was just being born. It really wasn't. We just starting to get the Grandmaster Flash and the Rapper's Delight from Sugar Hill Gangs. But this was different. This had energy. This had people that didn't even know the songs up and dancing to. So I encourage everybody to do a little deep dive and take a look into Tommy Boy from 81 to probably the early 90s when they were in their heyday, and look at some of the artists that are there. You'd be surprised who's all under that veil.
Yeah, not too bad for the son of a brake pad salesman, right?
I thought there was a Tommy Boy Story record, like a collection. I thought it was called the Tommy Boy Story. And I'm looking at it right now. And
he went to school out your way, Brian. He went to Michigan University for his graduate and stuff. So
yeah, I'm seeing Queen Latifah, Soul Sonic Force, Latin Rascals. They were pretty influential in freestyle. Information Society, What's on Your Mind? That's them. K7, Force MDs, TKA. What else do we have here? That would Club Nouveau. Lisa Stansfield. They had Lisa Stansfield. Wow.
Yeah, probably got her late. That was
There's
90s,
a
right?
lot of stuff on here. Yeah. Yeah. So
Definitely
really,
worth a deep dive in the rabbit hole for looking into that label and the compilation that's out. That's mine.
right on. All right, Matt, what do you got? You going to show us your phone?
I am going to show you my
That's
phone.
lame as hell, just so you know. By a record.
All right. So I would like for one of our sponsors to hear Brian's complaint and send me $35 roughly every week, and I'll go to the record store and build my vinyl collection.
That's how I did it.
Goodwill. It's where you find all the good stuff. Tape sale.
There you go. There you go. Well, when I think about movements similar to John talking about the birth of rap and just all the artists under Tommy Boy Records, I think about was thinking about the grunge rock scene earlier, and a band that really defines that era of music, the grunge music. Is anybody who would be the first band that come to your mind? Grunge rock 90s.
Nirvana.
Bingo. And when I think about Nirvana, I think about, and this was my own personal edit, just because,
Right.
time and the time that we live in and everything. But Nirvana, Nevermind. And I think about just what a defining album that was for that band too. Smells Like Teen Spirit, In Bloom, Come As You Are. What else did I see on there? Something in the Way. And I'm sure there's a couple I've missed out that probably also made it into the singles territory, into the hits territory.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That was a big one to miss. So that's really a band. And they birthed, who's probably my favorite band, the Foo Fighters, were begotten out of the tragedy that happened with Nirvana. So definitely a lot of appreciation for them and what these three men just brought to the scenes of grunge and rock and roll and just everything else that the Foo Fighters have dipped their hands in since.
All right. Nirvana
Produced by Butch Vig from Garbage.
Is that who discovered them? Okay, awesome.
No, he produced
Oh.
Nevermind.
Oh,
They
nice.
had two albums before that, notably Bleach. That was one that got him on everyone's radar, was Bleach, the album before Nevermind. But Butch Vig came in and produced it.
That was a very well produced album.
Yeah, it was.
I had no time for it at the time because it was really just kind of
Wasn't your
taking over my
style.
sandcastles. Well, no, it was screwed up because I was working down the same club I'm working at now. Back then, it's like, okay, where are the Radio Energy songs? Because they went away for a while because everything was so focused on that. John and I have talked about it because he remembers it. Eric, you probably remember it. Back then, like overnight, all of a sudden, all the real cool hot stations went away, and it was like this alt rock took over, like everything. And all the, 1 minute I was listening to CeCe Peniston, and the next minute it was like, what is this stuff?
It was all the sad stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it did
Yeah.
the same thing to the 80s. I don't like the term big hair, but I get it. But that same hard rock, fun party, get a girl, get a car,
Yeah.
music that the 80s was famous for, grunge came in. I mean, Warren tells a great story of went to Warner Brothers in New York, and there was Cherry Pie up on the wall, and they came back a year later, and there was Nirvana.
Uh-huh.
Like literally, like in a year's time. It was like, hey, thanks, but no thanks.
It was big changes. It was big changes.
Huge.
It was interesting because it did force me to deep dive. And it wasn't spoon fed to me. I didn't just, radio hit, I'll play this. No, I had to find stuff. So it was a challenge. It was kind of cool. And, I started doing some house stuff, just a lot of throwback stuff. And there was, the trance was coming on the scene at the time. That was interesting. I was playing that. There was still energy stuff going on in Europe, and I was getting that. And, a lot of people didn't necessarily know it, like from the radio, but they heard it where I was, and it became like a staple for them.
Well, and
different Euro tracks.
I'm sure you did this too, Brian and John. I was going to some clubs in California when I moved here in 93. And I remember coming in and they were playing like, dance music. But out of nowhere, you'd hear like a Nine Inch Nails song or a Cult song mixed into the dance. Then they'd go back to dance. Then they'd come back with a Billy Idol song and something else. And then they'd go back into the dance. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. Cause I wasn't that into the dance scene. It was fun to listen to, but I couldn't name everything I was hearing. But I knew when I heard Nine Inch Nails and the Cult.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know if it was a period of like, okay, I've got to do this to make this work. You know,
rock music was invited to the party in those days.
It just that was the point where I think I realized how homogenized the industry had become, because everything had to fit into this little slot of something. It had to be this grunge thing, or it had to be this R&B thing, or it had to be this adult contemporary thing. And there was a lot of that. It's like, you know, as soon as Nirvana hit, Michael Bolton lost his damn mind too and started playing all this stuff. Then Elton John and Phil Collins and Mariah Carey were not helping matters. They were doing all the adult contemporary stuff. So there was nothing dance that existed. It was either dry spell music or it was angry kid music. And
well, I don't think
what
I
happened?
think it was what was getting press. What was getting, I mean, the 70s and 80s were such a great time for music because you could hear a station like in Boston where you could hear a disco, a funk, an R&B, a punk, a rock, a whatever. That all went sideways. Yeah. Those days just.
I like the album. Don't get me wrong. I do like the album. It just, that whole movement was just disruptive. For us back then, what we were trying to accomplish, it was just disruptive.
Yeah, well, we were with it, but it was just a surprise. And it's like, this isn't going to fill my dance floor, but it's cool.
They'll jump around. It smells like Teen Spirit, but what are you going to go after that?
Right.
You know, I mean, I had the, you know, all that crap that followed the Jim Blossoms and Pearl Jam and and it got heavy rotation for me. I mean, and people would dance. People will dance to what they like. You know, it doesn't matter if it's really a dance track. If they like it, they'll go out and jump around to it. But it was kind of a bummer in other regards. It was great if you were doing like deep cuts. If you were in a place where you felt like you could go and do those deep cuts. But if you were somewhere where it was more mainstream, that was a weird place to be. And that's when I started doing the flashback stuff. And it worked well. It was hard to find that stuff at the time in the format that we were using, which was compact disc. The stuff that, you know, was out of press, you know, out of print, you know, like the Mid Without Hat Safety Dance single, like, you know, even the Eurythmics stuff, Human League stuff. I was doing all that. I was doing Soft Cell Tainted Love. I was, you know, those are the kind of things I was throwing in the mix to supplement for the lack of like great top 40 music that was coming out that could dance to. I was using that instead. So I guess it forced me to, you know, get creative.
Work a little harder, not just pick up on hot Latinas and just chill in your little booth.
Yeah. So. That came much later, by the way. So
just saying.
Yeah, I was doing right.
Nothing wrong with that, but
hey, and for Eric and John, because I was at Fuddruckers the day that Nirvana's Nevermind came out, and I know that because one of the guys that worked with me was on the magazine at Boston College, one of the music magazine writer. He interviewed Nirvana the day the album came out because they were playing down on Lansdowne Street on like a triple bill with like the Melvins and somebody else. He's like, your album came out today. Like, are you excited? And he came back and he goes, dude, I swear on my life, I think this album's going to be a big deal. I got to listen to it already and it's awesome. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, they're really cool guys from Seattle, 3 guys. I'm like, does it sound like STP? He's like, exactly. I'm like, I like new STP and Pearl Jam. And like, yeah, it was a big deal. But they were playing in Boston the day it launched.
Wow.
Which makes perfect sense because everything originates from Boston. Just saying.
All the good stuff does anyway. What do you got, Eric?
Well, God, give me the line. I bet you got to show me your phone. I deserve it like Matt too. I show my phone.
Are you hiding in the car or in the tool shed or something tonight? Where are you at?
He's witness protection. You can't get a GPS locale on him, so he's got this whole blur thing going.
Go ahead.
Next, he's going to have the thing over his eyes. He's going to have
his ankle bracelet knows where he is. Yeah.
Go ahead and try and ping me. You're not gonna.
What's with the black square over your eyes? You can't see me.
I'm not going to show my phone. All right, you guys will be all proud of me tonight.
How come's the iPad?
I'm going to show this.
Oh, we wrote it down.
Okay, 1987.
1987. I'm going to go to a soundtrack from 1987. I'm going to name 3 hits off it that were oldies. But this soundtrack also introduced maybe 3 or 4 new singles.
Okay.
I think you probably
Do we have to guess?
I'm
What's that?
guessing that's where he's going.
Yeah. See what
You
we
want us to
got.
guess it?
I think that's where he's going. Yeah.
You don't need to. Well, you got to know once I say. Let's
Well,
just,
I don't know before you even say it. I already know what you're talking about.
let's just say
I think I have an idea.
one of the oldies was "Hey Baby," Boys Channel. Brian, you must know it already. Stay,
Well, I knew it before you even said that.
Stay, Maurice Williams.
Yeah.
You guys with me? You guys all on board?
I know where you're going with this.
Dirty Dancing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Soundtrack of Dirty Dancing. What I liked about this album was, okay, it introduced us to, I've had the time of my life. That was a new single, big, huge hit,
Patrick Swayze, She's Like the Moon was on there.
She's Like the Wind.
Yeah.
What was the other one that,
Hungry Eyes.
Hungry
Eric
Eyes. There you go, Eric.
Eric Carmen. Yep.
And then it had oldies in it. I like soundtracks that give you the oldies too and new stuff. A lot of soundtracks is just like all new, but I like it when they introduce the older stuff again. That's
You know what was really interesting about that one? If I remember right, the Contours' "Do You Love Me" went crazy after that came out.
Do You Love Me, right?
And I don't
Back
think
again.
that song got a lot of traction when it was new, but when it was released on Dirty Dancing, I believe it was a single and charted again.
Yeah, I think Love is Strange was also recharted too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love is Strange. That and you can't do much with that for dancing unless you're going to dirty dance.
Well, they could in the movie. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I think that was recharted because of that movie. But
Yeah.
That was a time when soundtracks were like gold.
Yeah.
And they would release songs. I mean, famously, Ford Fairlane had "Rock the Cradle of Love," which was not an album release by Billy Idol. It had "Last Time in Paris" by Queensryche, not an album release, only on the soundtrack. We got soundtracks: "Great American Hero" or "Last American Hero" or "Last Action Hero."
Last Action Hero.
Oh, yeah.
That one had the
Yeah.
Def Leppard.
The Leopard and the Alice
Had a
Chains.
Gene Arslan on it too, didn't it?
Yeah. But they weren't released on albums. And that
Yeah.
was the thing when I first started to DJ, I was looking for soundtracks purposely to get tracks like on used CDs at a swap meet.
it
Like, oh, they got a soundtrack.
Yeah.
It would force you to buy the soundtrack just for
Yeah.
that single, right?
Same way they did the singles. They'd give you, I bought a sealed single for Prayer for the Dying. And on the B side was a piano acoustic version of Dreaming in Metaphors. And it was gorgeous. And I'm like, oh, I got to have this. I mean, they knew what they were doing because you had to buy music. Now I can go to, Tidal and get everything I just mentioned. So
I forgot all about the singles. God, you just brought back a memory boy from way back. Yeah,
I cleaned out a box today, and Colin, my 17-year-old, I had the Lita Ford and AC/DC Power Age. He goes, "What are these?" I go, "They're cassettes." And he's looking at them like trying to open it, and he opens it up. He goes, "What do you do with it? How do you put it in?" I said, "You just in the car. Usually just goes in sideways like this. It doesn't get all tangled up with this tape."
Well, sometimes.
Oh no, it plays through and then it keeps itself. And he goes, "It flips over." I go, No. It's got 2 lines on it so it can play both sides. I go, "That's the very first cassette I still have it. The case and the cassette was Power Age. The first cassette, because I got a cassette player in my 78 Dodge Aspen. We put one in, me and my dad. And the first cassette I bought at Strawberries was Power Age. And I drove around like I'd been given the keys to a house and $1 million and a hot wife. Like, look at me. Yeah, I'm playing a song. Crank the window down.
I can hear that song again quickly. I don't have to skip through 4
No, I know.
programs and try to write.
Yeah,
It
and
was, yeah.
like,
It was fancy if you had a cassette deck where you hit eject and it came out slowly. That was fancy.
oh, I never had
That was like posh.
Oh, those
And
were nice.
if you had a cassette player that automatically flipped the tape over without taking it out and flipping it,
Yeah, you
that
were
was
boss,
also-
boss level.
Oh yeah, that was where you had the like A/B button
Yeah.
or something. Yeah,
you were
that
like
was,
Don Johnson or somebody if you had that kind of stuff.
And then you have the cassette players where you say, "Okay, 5," it'll go down to track 5 and stop playing.
oh
Yeah.
jeez,
One of
that's a
those,
Yeah,
dream.
the auto search.
Those were great. Those were great. Yeah.
What was the hi-fi store in Boston that not Techniques, but something with a
It
T.
was like it was Tech Hi-Fi.
Tech Hi-Fi. And every year, Brian, they would come out with a catalog.
Mm.
And it would go from like the least expensive setup to the most. And they would be those blurry, like kind of Vaseline Playboy photos of like the setup. And you'd see a guy and a girl in the back talking.
Like
And they'd be blurred. And it would be like the new Kenwood receiver, AM/FM, built-in unit with a turntable on top and speakers on the bottom for like $189. Then they'd go up to like $20,000. And that one had the cassette that popped out and spun.
Right.
Nakamichi.
With like Bose speakers.
Oh, yeah.
And we've given you 901s in each corner of the room, as well as 802s that hang from this. It's like, and you read through it like, oh my God, I can't imagine having that kind of money. And now it's like, I have $200 earbuds to do everything that thing did.
Yeah, my brother, as well, some of you know, my brother's with me, and he's a bit older than I am, but he's definitely a boomer child, and he's still drilling over like, you know, Cliff's Cornwall speakers and stuff.
Yeah,
like, okay, yeah, he's well, I'm gonna get myself a set of Cornwalls, another set of Heresies. I'm like, we have a set of Heresies. I had them for a while. Now you have them. He bought them originally, then I got them, then he got them back. But he wants that old school stuff. We had a place here called Flannery and Halfsus, and that's where you bought your high-end stuff.
Right.
Like, you would go there to get ideas, and then you would go like to Best Buy to like buy the cheap stuff, you know. Because I mean, I never had money for. I did buy some stuff at Flannery, so now that I think about it, I bought a TV there. I did buy a TV there one time, but yeah, that was $high stuff.
The problem, Brian, now is, and I said this to my kids the other day. In high school, we had a kid who had this beat to crap, like 69 Dodge something. Just beat up, paint didn't match up, but he had the best stereo. And no one looked at the car as a bad car. He had like $2,000 worth of stereo gear. Now, nobody looks at that comparative.
No.
Like, you have a total S box, but you have a killer stereo, because I'm renting, you know, the cheapest Ford or Chevy they make, renting it from Hertz, and you get in and the surround sound sounds like an IMAX theater.
I had a just the ugliest turd brown 78 Thunderbird ever made. And it got 8 miles to the gallon, had a giant engine in it. It was a slug. It was a terrible car. I hated it.
The two-door with the 30-foot doors.
Yeah. And, you know, I put music in it. It was something left over from my siblings in the garage, you know. So I took the stereo equipment they had and put it in the way I knew it was supposed to be put in. It was ridiculous. It was amplifiers and good speakers and shit. And I remember my senior year of high school, that's when Soul to Souls Keep On Moving came out. So I was pulling into the parking lot every day with like Keep On Moving just bumping. and somebody could say, hey man, you might want to, you know, hide your stereo or put an alarm on your system, because there's been a lot of stereo robberies around here. I'm like, well, why would you say that I have an expensive stereo in my car? It's like, well, we hear you every morning. I'm like, oh, well, that's old stuff, but you know, thank you anyway. Yeah, that was a big deal. The car stereo. No, a hi-fi thing isn't a thing anymore. It's just not a thing. Nobody cares.
Well, you wanted one at home too. You wanted an elaborate home system because you were going to spend time. I mean, it's all really relative when you think.
If you were a bajillionaire, you had Macintosh.
Well, yeah, but you were going to
now. That stuff is not cheap. It's not like you can buy it used and get a deal on it.
No, not on that end. But you understood components like, oh, I want the Kenwood receiver, but I want a Takamine this.
And he's got the Nakamichi. Woo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you were going to spend time to go curate your album, even if you weren't a DJ. Then you were going to bring it home and put it on a turntable and listen to it through in its entirety.
Through the best system that you could
possibly
steal and borrow to put together.
I complained to my dad when I got the station wagon that I have to drive everyone. He's like, what do you mean? I go, because I have a wagon. Like everyone else has like smaller cars. I have to drive everyone.
Everybody's driving a Fiero.
I wanted to put, Michelle used to have Fiero. I wanted to put rear speakers in. So he goes, well, why don't we do this? And we hopped down to Radio Shack because I didn't have any money. And we got these bookshelf 6x9 box speakers.
Yeah.
And we took the framing off that goes above the window below the headliner in the rear, drilled 2 holes, screwed them in. So if you sat in the back seat, you had to sit like this because there was a speaker right here.
But you had house speakers through
Black box.
Pretty much. And they weren't exact house speakers. They were for the car, but they were like supposed to be mounted on a back deck.
Yeah,
But I also didn't have a rear
still have a set of those in the shop.
I have
my
right here
68
in
Plymouth,
this room.
and I got a little tiny box that you put on the rear deck of my 68 Plymouth, and you plugged a cable that ran under the rug into the cigarette lighter, and you'd hear this, and you would get this little hole on the rear window that would be clear while the rest of the entire thing was frozen. And I'm like, Dad, it's not clearing anything other than a little hole. He's like, all right, we'll try something else.
I remember growing up, and I had a lot of cars growing up. As far as stock radios go, I think Delco was probably one of the best sounding.
Now GM stuff. Right?
Yeah, the Delcos always sounded good.
AC Delco. Yep.
They were in Milwaukee for a while, then they left, like everything else.
I would think they would have been Detroit or that area.
Well, we did a lot of auto industry stuff here. We had Delco, we had Delphi, we had A.O. Smith. We did a lot. Like we built all the truck frames for all the trucks that came out of Detroit here, and then they just don't do it. Like I don't know, A.O. Smith closed 30 years ago, 40 years ago, a long time ago. Anyway, Jay, what's your pick this week?
Well, I want to follow John a little bit and go with a record label. I'm going Sugar Hill Records.
Oh, here we go.
All right. And I'm going to absolutely freak everybody out because I could say this as a hint, and we could spend the next 7 hours on this show and no one's going to guess the artist. I'll tell you who produced it.
Mm-hmm.
Produced by Alison Krauss,
Go.
the country artist Alison Krauss. Every time I get a wedding in my area, if there's woods, and we have a lot of woods out here, you know that because they burn every year. There's a band called Nickel Creek.
You were just here the other night.
Nickel Creek was?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Do you want to hear the whole story? Because I'll tell you the whole story.
Yeah.
Glenn Irvin from Promo Only, I was posting on Facebook, I'm going to Nickel Creek tonight at the Riverside, Milwaukee. And I'm like, yeah, I'm DJing 2 blocks from you. Come see me after the show. So he did.
Oh, yeah. I know he came by to see you. I didn't know
That's why he was in town to see Nickel Creek.
Yeah.
He flew to town to see Nickel Creek.
Oh, yeah. That's what people do with this group.
Yeah.
They're from Julian. Like where I live to get to Julian's about 50 miles away.
Okay.
And it's a probably 4,000 foot high town. So it's considered mountains. You know, they definitely get snow in the winter. And it's for most of the guys here, think like New Hampshire. It's very New Hampshire, like a lot of trees, a lot of woods. They grow apples up there. It's just a beautiful place. And these guys would win these bluegrass competitions when they were in high school.
Right.
It's a female. There's 3 members. There's a
trio. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a guitar player, violin, and mandolin. And Chris Thiel, the mandolin player, is considered one of the best in the world. And then Sean Watkins and his sister are the violin and guitarist. And 99% of their music is very bluegrass kind of country.
Yeah.
Very old school bluegrass.
Right.
And they were young. They came out, their biggest well-known song to me is the song Speak, which they filmed it, did a great video in San Diego and all that. Alison Krauss produced all their stuff, I think the first 3 albums worth, but they're on Sugar Hill Records.
Are they on? Is Nickel Creek on Sugar Hill?
They're on Sugar Hill. And
That's
it always
great.
shocked me because the end of their video would say Sugar Hill Records. And I'm like, that's not the Sugar Hill Records, is it?
That's
Which,
crazy.
believe it or not, Michelle's stepmother-in-law is really good friends with the owners now of Sugar Hill Records.
Oh, wow.
Like super good friends. Yeah. But when Speak came out, I just fell in love with this song. I've always liked mandolin, and there's a hook that Chris Thiel plays throughout the whole song. Just a really pretty song. The brother-sister team, their voices harmonize really well. All 3 of them singing it. And it's just a great album. The album is this side. It's got 13 tracks on it. Speak is the biggest one off of it. Smoothie Song is the other big one off it. This Side was probably the one they're best known for, but Speak is the one that just freaks me out, where they got a lot of notoriety early in their career. They did Toxic by Britney Spears as a bluegrass 3-piece. So this is early 2000s, before that was a thing. Bands weren't really doing, hey, we're taking this really fast 140 pop song and doing a takeoff on it. But they didn't do a spoof of it. They did a version of it.
Nice.
And they're just a really good group, but they've managed to keep their fans. I mean, if Glenn flew to Milwaukee from Florida,
Glenn flew from Florida to Milwaukee just to see this.
Yeah, I think that kind of, no pun intended, that speaks to kind of who they are as a band. But when John brought up the whole Tommy Boy, I'm like, you know what? I was going to do Winger, which pissed me off because Brian would have been right.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to go with another Sugar Hill Records group, and that's Nickel Creek, which
that's very interesting, though. That I absolutely find this interesting, Jay.
I figured this would save me from the all right, I'm doing Winger this week.
The hair bands in the 80s, they were pretty good. And the guitar player for this band was also that band.
I've done Aerosmith Live bootleg again?
On a reunion tour. And
Winger is back, by the way.
With real maple syrup.
All the girls flash their titties when they come on stage back in them days.
Winger has new stuff out. So.
Oh, they do, and it's good. Their new stuff is actually really good.
All right, pick a number between 1 and 5.
6.
6. Okay, that doesn't work. 1 and 5.
Oh, we're doing your
wait.
Maps don't end. It just goes off the other side and comes back around again.
No, I need between 1 and 5.
3.
3. Okay.
I like 3.
3 from the bottom or 3 from the top?
Top.
3 from the bottom.
3 from the bottom.
Okay, bottom. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, top or bottom? Which one are you, Jay?
Probably more top.
Okay, top. 3 from the top.
Right, that's going to be my new ringtone. When are you, Jay?
3 from the top.
He's definitely top. His hair
I just I had to think for a second.
Okay, so 3 from the top, left or right?
Left. He grabs a disco album by
left or right? Left or right?
Right.
So right and right, correct?
Sure.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
We should just do east or west.
I go 1, 2, 3 from the top. I go left and then I go right, correct?
Yes.
Give me another number. Any number between
2
and 2. Okay, we'll do 2.
He's going to pull off the Sugar Hill Gang.
Yeah. That's going to be Winger.
I'd love it to be.
Winger.
We'll have to be lower in the catalog. I don't know where he hides his rock in there.
Yeah, find the album.
Oh, Black Sabbath, Never Say Die. I'm surprised I found this one. Prince covered this.
And only there's a bluegrass version from Nickel Creek.
Interestingly enough, we almost did Ministry.
Oh, that would have
been killer.
We missed it by 1. So we had to go to the right to the next album. Okay. We had to go to the next album.
Oh, could have
And I don't have my reading glasses here. But, I do have my reading glasses here. What am I saying right here? I have a light on. Interestingly enough, my brother and I were discussing this gentleman today because he's from the Milwaukee area.
Violent Femmes.
And when he was young, his parents were musicians, right? So, and they were into the music scene and stuff in Milwaukee.
Is this Donnie Iris?
And when he was young, his uncle would come over and teach him guitar when he was like 6 to the time he was like 14. His uncle came over and gave him guitar lessons. His uncle was from Waukesha, and it was Uncle Les Paul. And the artist I'm talking about is Steve Miller.
Yeah.
Steve Miller, Fly Like an Eagle.
I was going to say Steve Miller. Yeah.
What a joker.
That was
I don't know if that's this album or not.
I don't either.
And
I don't think
this
it is.
red writing and really hard for me to read, but we know Fly Like an Eagle's on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is very difficult to read back
Take
here.
the money and run.
I don't know what's on Fly Like an Eagle, honestly, because in my world, it was all about the greatest hits.
Yeah.
It was all about the greatest hits.
Don't you have it?
And what's insane about Steve Miller that you never hear this is that he is one of one of the more respected blues guitar players because of his upbringing, but he's known for being this like rock pop guy that doesn't really try to play that hard. But from what I've read and heard from a lot of respected artists, when he takes the gloves off, he's there.
I've always liked Steve Miller.
Okay, this is interesting. The side one, the only song that most of you will probably know,
Jungle
is
Love?
"Fly Like an Eagle."
Yeah.
There are other songs on here, and then the second side, "Take the Money and Run,"
That's
Hit.
and "Rockin' Me."
That's good.
Rock me, baby.
well, they're all great songs. Yeah.
Yeah, the Joker's not on here, or whatever you said before. It's not here. And yeah, so yeah, in my world, it was all about the greatest hits. But this album came out in 1976.
Wow.
So there's my
It was that period where you went to see shows that you didn't need lights for. Jay Giles, Bob Seger, Steve Miller. There were bands that had, eventually Tom Petty, other artists that were kind of a known entity, but it was a band that kind of played great songs, and it wasn't a performance as much as you just saw a band play.
Right.
And you liked their music. You could drive to it, you could listen to it, you could go to concerts for it. You didn't. I think today you need acts that are like, we've spent $2 million on lasers. Well, yeah, of course you did, because you're talentless. Like if you didn't have a great, like you leave there and go, their laser show is amazing. Well, that's a good sign the music wasn't.
Right.
Sorry.
If you're going to leave there thinking the lights, then something's wrong.
I'm not
as a recommendation. I will say this. I do not recommend you get a copy of Steve Miller "Fly Like an Eagle." I recommend you get the greatest hits.
Right.
Okay, just
That's
to be
the
clear,
ones you just mentioned.
those are the ones that you're going to actually use as a DJ. I play these songs.
Yeah.
And I always ask myself every time I play these songs, especially when I play songs like Jungle Love,
Great song.
if Steve Miller knew these songs were never going to go away, like ever, would he have done that annoying whistle in Jungle Love?
But it's kind of cool.
Or the whistle in The Joker? Well, after they say, some people call me Maurice, with the guitar slide, rant. Would he have done
You
that?
hear people do that at weddings when you play, like I'll play that. Full Tilt Remix did a great flashback. They did 2 CD release of flashbacks, and they added beats to all big songs, and that's one of them is The Joker. And they really accent that, and it's fun when you play it because you watch the smile on people's faces, like, yeah, woo, woo, like,
Yeah.
they're not hearing it the way we heard it. And that's kind of cool that they can hear a song 40, 50 years later and still enjoy it.
I think those songs are a staple for everyone, though. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe not children, but let's say anyone over the age of 30, maybe. These songs are a staple.
Steve Miller never left classic rock radio. He's still, at least
he's
once
still
an hour,
there.
you'll hear him.
Yeah.
Right, we get a ZLX station in Boston. You'll hear him every hour or something. Yeah, vast catalog of hits. So
Today, my brother was
Shaggy
saying,
borrowed that beat. The
Angel
beat for the Joker for Angel. Yeah.
today my brother was saying, whatever happened to Steve Miller? Like, I haven't heard anything from him.
He's
Like,
still around.
well, he's around. He just was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But the last song I remember Steve Miller doing is Abracadabra.
I was going to say Abracadabra was the last hit he
That's
had.
still one of
Was
my.
it 81, 82?
It was a while ago.
I still play that.
It was
Abracadabra.
a while ago.
Yeah.
There's an expiration date on hits, I think. And it feeds into what you've always said, Brian, about, once they get over their 30s, it's hard to get that kind of big bangers out there. And I've often had this great quiz question, which is very simply, name the band where it's all the original members that have had hits in multiple decades, the longest. And the only answer I've ever come up with is U2, because they've managed to be together since the 70s, and they were relative and doing big shows all the way through today.
Right.
And you get ZZ Top. Sadly, last year they lost.
No longer.
They lost Dusty. But, when you think of, they're still out touring every single year. But the last time I remember ZZ Top doing much of anything was the mid 80s. Like there was no huge banger from like the late 90s, early 2000s.
When did all these songs like Pearl Necklace and stuff come out?
That was the 80s.
But that wasn't Afterburner, was it?
It was after
No,
Burner
that
and
was
Eliminator.
pre-Eliminator. It was before Eliminator.
It was pre-Eliminator.
79
That's
to
what I thought.
81. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
All
and
that chips and glasses and all that stuff.
well, it's like you look back on the 90s now and realize, you know, I moved here in 1993, which to me, it's like, oh, 93, that's 20 years ago, because there's a 10-year gap all the time. And it's either 2000 to 2010 or something. But you forget that 30-year gap of stuff. I saw PBS the other night had, I think he's touring again. I know he's got some arthritis or a condition in his hands, but Peter Frampton. So he did a whole show at Albert Hall sitting down, and he sounded great. And I looked at my son, I go, that's my first concert. I saw him in July of 1979. And he looks at me like, really? I said, it gets better. I saw him in June of 1999 with your mom at the Del Mar Fair. And I remember looking at her, and it meant a lot to me. I'm like, you know, and he made a joke on that tour about, like, I don't know if some of you saw me earlier. I used to have hair, because at this time he was already kind of pretty bald and
He's
white
very
hair.
bald now. Yeah.
But I mean, he still sounded great.
He
But
does.
it's like,
Yeah.
it was just, you know, the experience of the 15-year-old me at a concert versus the 35-year-old me at a concert versus now I'm 36.
Right.
You know, it's a different experience
Yeah.
throughout those decades.
Well,
But it's still the music, because
yes.
we love music and it
Well,
means something.
Speaking in terms of, you know, accomplished musicians, I mean, people who are just amazing. I think that's why Peter Frampton was so interesting. I mean, he wasn't 30 yet when you saw him, I don't think. He might have been.
79. He'd put out Comes Alive was what, 76?
Probably.
I bet he
he
was
30
in his
yet?
late 20s. No, I think he's probably in his late 20s.
Okay, somebody with that kind of talent, the writing, the guitar playing, the vocal talent, that's impressive when you're young.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not impressive when you're older, you know. It's a
Well,
given.
and he came out of Humble Pie. I mean, he was in Humble Pie before he went solo.
It's kind of like, you know, I had my
With
stroke
Steve
at 30.
Marriott.
I had my stroke at 39. Everybody lost their mind. Oh my God, you're only 39. I'm 52 now. If I had a stroke now, I'd be like, yeah, he's 52. He had a stroke. Of course he did. He's 52. That's what old farts do. They have strokes. So it's more impressive when you're young to do things than it is when you're older, I guess.
Well, you know what? I just said late 20s. He was born in 1950. So when I saw him, he was 29.
Yeah, I didn't think he was 30. I
He's
knew
73 now.
he was David Bowie's age,
Well, and
wasn't he?
As
Or a year
you know,
younger or something?
Bowie took him out in the 80s after his career went from the peak of peaks to fell off the cliff.
But you're right. For Glass
Bowie
Spider-
took him out on Glass Spiders as his guitarist.
Why? Is the more
Because
interesting question.
Bowie and Frampton went to school together, and Peter Frampton's dad introduced them because he goes, I have a student, Davy Jones, and he's a musician. You should hang out with him. And that's how they became friends.
They were
at a very
school
young
friends.
age.
Are you friends as teenagers or something like that? Yeah.
Oh, no, even younger. I think they were
Was it
almost
younger?
elementary school.
Oh,
Or
was
maybe
it?
could have been junior high. But
They were
I
young
think-
though. Yeah.
I think Bowie, who everything I've read and heard about Bowie, I think at the forefront of Bowie's life was understanding doing the right thing for the right moment, musically, artistically. But I also think he saw Frampton, who was incredibly talented, a great showman, could handle a stage by himself. I mean, he had a 5-piece band when I saw him, played for a good 2 hours.
Wow.
And he commanded the Boston Garden. And side note, if I ever meet Peter Frampton, I will not only thank him for his incredible catalog, the joy his music has brought me, but it was the first time in my life where I, as a young man, was able on the floor of the Boston Garden to turn around like this and have 2 women behind me lift their shirts up to flash the stage. And that moment still lingers.
What did I say about flashing? I knew it was going to come up.
Lingers.
From the garden. If only you had a memory of that, a memento, a large chunk of stone.
It's up there. It's up there. You can see it in the background. It's right up there. The brick from the Boston Garden that my parents sent me when they tore down the garden.
That brick has shared a moment with you.
I think Bowie took him on tour because he was more than competent, but also because he may have looked at him and said, why the hell are you people turning your back on Peter Frampton?
Yeah.
Like, he was famous like with this great career a few years ago.
Bowie.
Why are you
yeah.
turning your back? You know what? Screw you guys. He's my guitar player. I genuinely think at some point Bowie had that conversation with himself.
I think we want to think of Bowie as a musician, but I mean, Bowie said himself he's a performance artist. But I almost kind of think of Bowie as a curator, where he just takes talented people and puts them together and does amazing things.
Are you guys familiar with the guitarist Adrian Belew?
I know the name.
Okay, Adrian Belew is one of these guys that if you said, can you just play a regular pop song? He'd probably struggle. But if you said, can you make your guitar sound like a whale
Right.
during the day that meets a wolf? You got the right guy. Well, guess what? Adrian Belew, like Earl Slick, like Jose Martinez, like Peter Frampton, like all these great players, was one of Bowie's guys. And Bowie had this ability, like you say, Brian, to grab guys and say, I need a different sound, and find people
Right.
that was their thing.
Yeah.
Adrian Belew was out making noise in a like alt band, and all of a sudden Bowie comes along and says, I like this guy. Well, we talked about it last week with Living Color.
Living Color, yeah.
Here's Mick Jagger goes to, I think, the Bottom Line in New York and sees the band and goes, oh, this is it. I need to get them up here.
Right.
I mean, it speaks to how qualified great musicians and performers are in understanding what great quality music is. The Stones took Guns N' Roses out on the road well before they blew Appetite up. They were on their way, but they had not become the household name yet.
And the Stones took Prince out, and it didn't work out.
And they took Sheryl Crow, and they took Santana, which is a bad example because Santana played at Woodstock. But
Well,
you know,
wait a minute. Well, when did they take Sheryl Crow out?
Sheryl Crow was one of their openers, I think, in the 90s.
Okay, because I know Michael
that Bridges
Jackson
of
was using
Babylon?
Sheryl Crow as a guitar player in the 80s.
Doing background. She's the one that does the
She's Dirty Diana, isn't she?
Dirty Diana.
Solo on that?
No, I think that's
Steve Stevens, the Billy Idol guy, isn't it?
it's either Steve Stevens or Jennifer Batten.
No, I'm talking about the
Jennifer-
touring guitar player.
Oh, Jennifer Batten was his touring guitarist.
I thought it was Sheryl Crow.
Woman. No, she
Oh,
can't
sure
do
it was
it. That
Sheryl Crow.
stuff. She can chord it. She can play chords all day. She can't do those solos. That's this girl, Jennifer Batten.
Maybe she was just doing rhythm and vocals then, huh?
Yeah, I think that I know she was doing background. I don't even know if she played. He's had Orianthi. He's had Jennifer Batten, who are two incredibly, incredibly good guitar players, but were overshadowed at all times because they were women, and it was still not a thing to have these women. When Michael Jackson died, that famous video you see of him on stage doing the run-throughs, that's Orianthi. That was his guitar player.
Well, that was later, though.
No, it was. But before then, he had Jennifer Batten. She had like the spiky blonde hair.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah, that's Jennifer Batten.
But they
got to
freaked
meet her
Sheryl Crow out for that stuff, too. She kind of had that vibe going when he took her.
She did. She's in Dirty Diana.
The
She's in
video for it, yeah.
Yeah. And she's doing vocal stuff.
Because it's like a live concert video, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that whole Tuesday Writers Club that she got into, that her first album came out of, because she was initially an elementary school teacher, and then took the dive moving up to California. I hate to say it, but I've probably learned more about Sheryl Crow from her interviews with Howard Stern than anywhere else, because he asks open questions that she can just run with.
Right.
But yeah, incredible.
What was that like?
Yeah, and then
tell me more.
Really, you hung out with him? And it's like you hung out with Michael. Well, I went to his house. Did he have the monkey? Here's the 10. Did you drink wine? No, Howard.
Howard's met Michael. I don't know what he's doing with that.
Yeah, trying to make noise.
Howard's had meetings with him, those people and stuff.
Oh, I'm sure
he did. There was when the whole the first thing where he got charged with what he got charged with happened.
Right.
His PR people had a meeting with Howard Stern because they wanted Howard Stern to take it to the streets and proclaim Michael's innocence because people listen to Howard Stern. He writes about it in one of his books. Talks about the whole thing.
Oh.
He said, Michael's there, and the guy's got so much makeup on him, it's hot. The guy's melting in front of me. He's like, his whole face is melting off. I think it's Private
Michael.
Parts. He talks about that. Or maybe it's the next book. I don't remember.
I have to send him a tweet because if I hear Howard Stern one more time say, "Can you believe I love this song, Mama, I'm Coming Home," and look at these beautiful lyrics that Ozzy wrote, and it's like, okay, enough. Lemmy Kilmister from Motorhead wrote all the lyrics for Mama, I'm Coming Home, and Ozzy famously mentions it. Lemmy is credited on the song. And then he's like, but all these other songs that Ozzy hasn't written a lyric to a song in his career. Every
Well, that's
song
okay.
by Black Sabbath is Geezer Butler on lyrics. And pretty much the first 4 albums by Ozzy are Bob Daisley, the bass.
A lot of these guys get it wrong. We get it wrong sometimes, and we get it wrong, we retract. Okay. But I was listening to an XM station the other day. Of course, I'm being subject to all this classic rock because my brother's around and he hasn't, bought an album since Pat Benatar's Crimes of Passion. So everything's got to be old that he
It's
listens.
been a minute.
So, yeah. So they were talking about the song off of Rumors. It's really good. And they played Silver Springs. I'm like, Silver Springs was not on Rumors.
That's not on Rumors.
No.
Good.
That's not one of the 4 songs on Rumors.
It was, but then the next day, I think it was a different DJ was on. It was today, actually.
Yeah.
And they I guess they had been told, hey, that's not on Rumors, dude. It's on a couple special editions of it, but,
And there's whatever. No, right.
So the story
the audience
is,
listening on XM is going to be like adamantly like, whoa, I saw them
Hold
on
on a
that
second,
tour.
pal.
Whoa. Yeah.
my first, yeah. I mean, I knew, I'm like, that wasn't on Rumors. But today they told an interesting story. I don't know if it was the same DJ or a different DJ because they must have gotten so much crap for it. And they were saying how it was supposed to be on Rumors. But it wasn't. Nick and them didn't feel like it fit. So they recorded another song that they thought should be on Rumors. And then I guess Lindsay was doing the vocals that Stevie Nicks was supposed to be doing, but she didn't do it.
Huh.
The hell song was it? Was it Never Going Back Again? The acoustic number he does that Lindsay does? I gotta look at the track listing now.
Did she do it as well?
Stevie Nicks came back and redubbed some of her.
I can hear that playing. That's the real plucky one, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Never going back again. Is that what he said?
Let me just.
love
Maybe
that.
I'm talking out of my butt. What? No,
Good song.
no, I'm wrong. The song that they did was, I think I'm wrong. It could be, but I actually, now that I'm looking at it, I think it was Secondhand News that they did instead of using Songbird,
Oh.
or not Songbird, but Silver Spring.
Spring. Yeah.
They did Secondhand News.
Lindsay's thing is, what is it? Big Time?
Big Love.
It's Big
And that's
Love.
the Fleetwood
the
Mac
solo
song.
piece. Yeah, I love that.
No, it's an old. Well, he does a solo on the Chain concert, but that was a Fleetwood Mac song. That was off of. It's off Mirage, maybe.
That's an old one.
No,
Is that Bob Welch days?
no, that's like mid '80s.
Oh.
Big Love. That's like mid '80s. It's a cool song. In fact, I have the 12-inch single dance, the 12-inch dance single of it back here.
He wasn't solo at that time when he did Big
The
Love?
only thing that I can think of that he did solo that did anything
Trouble.
Trouble and Holiday Road.
Which one?
Holiday Road.
Holiday Road from Vacation.
Vacation.
Mm.
And then Stevie, of course, did Stand Back and Edge of 17
Soundtrack.
and Love and Lace and all this stuff. I don't know that Mick Fleetwood
Did you say you've heard The Edge of 17 by Wookie?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it came out like in December, maybe?
Yeah, that's his the last kind of cover single thing he did. But
Oh, yeah. Speaking of music, we kind of went off and didn't really have a show about anything, kind of like Seinfeld. Same thing. We have an entire show about nothing here. But the Wookiee song that I think is really cool is To Be Real, sampling Cheryl Lynn's To Be Real.
yes,
It's not on promo only yet. It did not pop up on my RPM Top Hits USA. I want it, but I'm trying to be patient here,
I
guys.
expect you will see it shortly.
It's
I just had a thought. I'm never going to be asked. No one's ever going to call me and say like, "Hey, dude, we need a producer for this album. Can you come in?" But if it ever does happen, when you were talking about singles and artists and songs, for some reason, this vision in my head came together that every time I ever hear anyone talk about a song on the album that goes huge, it's 100% always the same story. Wow, what was the genesis of this song? Well, we'd already done the whole album.
right.
We'd done. The
Yeah.
producer goes, "Hey, we need one more." And we spent 7 seconds and we wrote this.
Yeah.
So if I ever have to produce a band, my strategy is going to be this. Day one, guys, we're good, but we're going to need one more song. And then the next day come in and be like, "That song's great. I just need one more though, but it has to be done in 2 hours." Seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have a whole thing with a label and they're going to move some people in the studio.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
Made a
thing.
press. Yep.
You guys can just, and I'm going to put out an album with like 18 singles on it because every song is going to be written.
That was,
Highly
that was-
pressurized.
I just need one more.
that was Springsteen with Dancing in the Dark.
I was Def Leppard with Pour Some Sugar on Me. They were
Yeah.
done.
It was
Literally,
BTO
my
with
line
You
is
Ain't
like,
Seen
I
Nothing
need-
Yet. The
Oh,
list
it's
goes on
everybody.
and on. It's everybody.
Every band, it's like, where'd you come up with this? The biggest single of your career? Well, we were all done. We were at a Denny's having a,
I literally wrote it on a napkin.
breakfast.
Yeah, I wrote it on a
Yeah.
napkin in about 60 seconds.
And the producer came in and said, the engineer said, "We lost the tape. You guys got to do something else, but you have 30 seconds. So we wrote Stairway to Heaven. I mean, it's just the way it went. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing about it.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
well, I mean, Traffic, Low Spark of High Heel Boys. It's like, guys, just do one more thing. Okay, we'll just jam. That's the story I've heard. It's a jam.
The
They're
story
just
with,
playing.
yeah. The story with Ain't Seen Nothing Yet is really funny if you ever hear Randy Bachman tell it. They were doing a joke track because Randy has a brother with a severe stuttering problem. So they were doing like a joke track to send to him. Guess what? Baby, you ain't seen nothing yet. And they did the album, and Roll On Down the Highway was what Randy thought would be the hit. And the producer's like, dude, this is nothing. And the guy in the engineering booth's like, well, we got another one. They're like, no, don't show him that one. That's a joke. And they played it for me. He's like, guys, you're going to be performing this song for the rest of your
Forever.
life.
Yeah. Thank God
What do you mean?
Professor
That's
Rock
terrible.
did a
Like, no. This is a hit. And you're going to be playing this song for the rest of your life.
This is the one. Get used to playing this over and over.
The one.
This is the encore.
I see the other day, and they said it was a throwaway track they did. I for the life of me can't remember who it was. It was some band. It was their biggest thing, and it was literally like a throwaway track. They did 2 versions of it, and the release was one of the 2. Oh, it may have been Neil Young and a Howard Stern interview because he loves Neil Young and he does really good interviews with him. And he's like, well, what about this track? It's like one of your biggest tracks. Like, oh, that we just did that. And I didn't really like it. And then, like 2 months later, we came back and I think I added a vocal, but I'm like, yeah, I don't want to put this out. And it became like Old Man or something like, or
Right.
Needle and Damage Done.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
One run. That was a one run. Like, here you go.
Yeah. All that stuff sounds like it's supposed to be from a movie. All that stuff.
But
Sugar
you know the
Mountain,
difference,
Neil
Brian?
Damage Done. It sounds like it's like a movie soundtrack that we never saw the movie to.
It does. Because he's one of those artists that is a very visual.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in Saugus, Massachusetts on a back patio late at night with a Walkman listening to, I think it's called World Machine by Level 42.
Yeah.
It has Lessons in Love, Something About You.
Mhm.
And listening to another track on there that I can't recall. And just, if I closed my eyes, I could see like kind of a Vice Beach scene and the guys in all white with the wind. And I'm like, man, every song in this album is so visual. It wasn't just music.
I can't think of an artist, and I'm not a big Neil Young fan, just to put a point on that. But I mean, Live Rust was a staple in my family. My mother had it, my brother had it, my sister had it. It got played a lot.
Yeah.
So it was like all those songs. And I always thought there's a movie I haven't seen
Well, wasn't that a movie for him? Wasn't it like a concert movie?
It might have been a concert. It might have been a concert movie. If it was, I never saw it. But
think it was.
But the stories on all of those songs totally belong in the movie. So now that Neil Young sold his catalog, which I know he's done, and he's all bent about it because people are using his stuff for commercials now. But that's what you get when you sell your all your
Well,
music.
and what's funny is he tells that story, and he goes, because it gets brought up. He's like, Bruce Springsteen sold his catalog for like $300 million, and Bob Dylan sold his catalog. Everyone's selling their catalog because it's worth money,
right?
But Neil Young goes, Howard Stern says, "Aren't you afraid it'll end up in stupid commercials?" And he goes, "No, no, no."
And it does.
I didn't sell the whole thing. I've retained some of it, but I sold it to a trusted friend, and that won't happen. And I'm like, dude, we're talking hundreds of millions.
How are they going to make their money back if they don't sell it for that?
Of course, it will happen. When you buy something,
here's what I'm going to pitch. I'll pitch it on this show. Okay.
Yep.
Now that the album's up for grabs and Neil has nothing to say about it, and Hollywood's looking for stuff to do, how about you write a movie based on some of those songs?
Oh God, can you imagine?
How about that?
Money there, absolute money there.
The soundtrack is there. Now take all those songs and write a movie about those songs.
I'll give you the director, P.T. Anderson.
He talks about Johnny Rotten.
P.T. Anderson.
And Rock and Roll Will Never Die.
Can you imagine? P.T. Anderson from Boogie Nights and
it'd be a movie about punk rock.
Yeah.
It's what it would be, and the soundtrack would be Neil Young.
Neil Young is credited with being, just like Johnny Cash, Neil Young is the grandfather of punk. Ask Pearl Jam. That's what they call him, the grandfather of punk. They adore him.
If they're not calling Johnny Cash the grandfather of punk that day.
I think Johnny Cash, Mike Ness is calling him the grandfather. I mean, Johnny Cash is ground zero for punk. You don't get punk without the Man in Black, bucking the system, talking to prisoners, writing songs about prison and all that. You don't have a punk movement without that. Neil Young came along and bucked the system on his own way of like, I'm not putting up with this. My friends died of heroin, 4 dead in Ohio when he was with CSNY. It's that same sort of independent vibe thing. Neil Young's big song and dance thing now, and it has been for years, is quality music. He's into this, forget waveforms. I want
Zune thing.
I want Zune with like high resolution.
That's his player.
Yeah, he did. I mean, that's his thing.
Yeah.
You know, he's married to, by the way, Daryl Hannah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Still kind of a babe. I dig Daryl Hannah.
Oh, I
love her as an actress.
Nothing wrong with that.
She was crazy good in the Kill Bill movies. Oh my gosh,
she was good in Splash. She was good in everything.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, we need to end the show now before we start. Before I start giving too much information. So
Daryl Hannah tribute show on Brian S. Red's channel.
Yeah, the after hours.
We're ending the show now.
Real quick, Brian. One of the things I want to leave you on real quick is this.
Yes.
I'm not saying there aren't great new
from Jay Brennan. Okay, go ahead.
I'm not saying there aren't great new artists. But what I'm saying is we all seem to understand the passion and performance of all the artists we've mentioned tonight. And the one thing they all have in common, none of them lived on the music we're talking about in the digital realm. They lived in the 2-inch tape world, where musicians had to have it together, not make real mistakes, not just play a note and auto-tune and repeat it in Pro Tools and all that. We're talking about people who, when they said 3, 2, and pointed, had to deliver. And when they say they did 1 or 2 takes, it was on 2-inch tape. You could slice.
Yeah.
You had to be able to deliver.
Well, just so you guys know, before we close the show, tonight's Tuesday Night Music Show is and final thoughts are brought to you by AARP. Okay.
The lights just went off.
This is going to shake your fist at the Sky production.
I was actually looking for the Oscars walk-off music. I was going to start playing J. Elvis again.
I told you that wedding. I did a wedding for a film guy from UCLA, and he gave me the track. It's called Ode to Bill Conti, and it's the actual track they play at the Oscars. And he goes, if any of the toasters tonight at the wedding talk too much. Just play this. And I had done his wife's sister's wedding a year earlier. Family knew me. They did 4 toasts. And then the groom gets up to speak and he goes, today, and just as he said today, I hit play and played it. And the place erupted because they all got it. They were all like film people. And he did a film video where he like intertwined Star Wars with his actual wedding. I mean, it was like world-class production stuff. Yeah. I played Bohemian Rhapsody is one of the last songs. And it was that kind of theater group that just lost their ever-loving minds and went ballistic. It was so much fun. So much fun. But yeah.
We'll have more stories for you next week.
Cool, kids.
Thanks for watching.
Everybody.
See you then.